Uh, Good afternoon. My name is Shep, and I am the owner and cheesemaker at Gunn Artisan Cheese. So what I'm hoping to do today is just to give you a little brief glimpse into what it is like in our cheese factory. And if you have any questions along the way, sometimes I can jump by things or move kind of quickly. Um, Feel free to ask me, and I'm more than willing to help out. But basically, we're a small cheese factory. We take milk from my parents' dairy farm, which is just south of Woodstock, Ontario, and across the field from the cheese factory. And then we make it into different types of lesser known Swiss style cheeses. So, any typical day, we're making cheese. So, we make cheese 5 days a week. And typically, we do about 4,000 to 6,000 liters of milk a day into different kinds of cheese, which is pretty much all the milk that my family makes at the dairy farm there. So what I'd like to do is we're just going to kind of take a walk through the cheese factory, and I'm just going to do it in order of how things happen in the cheese making process, just so you have a good idea of kind of how it works from the beginning to the end. And through that process, I'm just going to be kind of switching my camera between the front-facing and the back-facing camera, just so you have a chance to see some of the things that I'm looking at. So basically where it all starts is it starts with raw milk. So where I am right now, this is our milk receiving bay. So we get milk from my family's farm, and it gets brought over here by a truck. It's about 500 meters across the field. So it's a little bit too far to go on a pipeline, but we pump it into a tank like this that you see in the image, and it stays there. It's kept cold until we're ready to use it. So for example, today we're going to be getting milk, which we are using tomorrow, and a little bit of that will be used the next day as well. So typically we get about 6,500 to 7,000 liters of milk in a shipment, and then we get milk delivered to us every other day. So this is the raw milk area. So milk comes to us raw, and what raw milk basically means is it's just straight from the cows, and it potentially has some things in it that could make people sick. And so our first step of making cheese is we actually have to pasteurize the milk. So I'm going to move here to the pasteurizer. Basically what pasteurization means is we're heating the milk to 72 degrees Celsius for 16 seconds. So you can see there's lots of different pipes on the wall and a bunch of tanks and pumps and things like that. But effectively what happens is as the milk goes through this unit that you see, it gets heated up from 2 degrees to 72 degrees Celsius, and then cooled back down to 30 to 35 degrees Celsius. So to put that in perspective, 72 degrees Celsius is super hot. You can't touch that without getting burnt right away. And 32 degrees Celsius is just kind of nice and warm. A little bit on the cool side, but feels nice and warm. So I see a question up here, which I'll start with right away because we're talking about the milk anyways, is the question is, do different breeds of cows have different tasting milk? Well, as a general rule of thumb, cows have similar tasting milk, but that said, certain breeds will have more fat in the milk or more protein in the milk. So we have mostly Holsteins. Holstein cows are known for producing a lot of milk, but with a little bit less butter fat in the milk. Another breed, for example, like Jerseys, are known for producing milk with more butter fat in it. So cheese from Jersey milk will have a little bit more cream in it, which typically means it's better suited for softer cheeses like brie and whatnot. Whereas milk from Holstein cows is a little bit better suited for the types of cheese that we make. So that's the pasteurization process. And then from there, the room that you see right here, this is our production room. So this is kind of where everything happens. And I just want to give you a glimpse of what it looks like. What this big piece of equipment in front of you is this is our cheese vat. So this is where we actually make all of our cheese. So this cheese vat here holds about 4,000 liters. And then we have a second one in the room that holds about 1,500 liters of milk. So the cheese vat, basically the milk goes into the cheese vat through a big hose. And through the process of cheese making, we more or less take the milk, we add some ingredients. The first ingredient is a bacteria culture. The bacteria eats the sugar or the lactose in the milk and makes the milk more acidic as time goes on. And then the second ingredient is called rennet or microbial enzyme, which coagulates or thickens the milk. So the point of making cheese effectively is to take out some of the water that's in the milk, because milk is very watery, and then basically to end up with something with a lot less water in it. So in general, it takes about 10 liters of milk to make about 1 kilogram of cheese. So in our cheese factory, we probably make about 7 different kinds of cheese. But in those certain types of cheese, we'll have different varieties. So for example, one of our cheeses is called Five Brothers. That's our most popular one. But we have Five Brothers regular, and then we have Five Brothers smoked. And then at Christmas time, we have a Five Brothers that we age for extra long. So some of the cheeses that we made today, I would just like to show you for a minute. So one of them, sorry about this, is a brie style cheese. And so it's kind of hard to see, but underneath this plastic here, there's all little wheels of brie. And so in about 7 to 8 weeks, they're all going to be ready to eat. And each one of these little wheels weighs about 200 grams or so. So that's one of the types that we made today. The other type that we made today is a Gouda style cheese, and it's all sitting right here. So we're actually done with making cheese today. We start at 4 in the morning, and then we're usually done most of the process around noon. And then from that point on, the cheese sits in these forms here on the table until the next day. The reason for this is there's still some of the bacteria growing in it, and some more water has to come out of it. But there's a bunch of steps in between, but basically we start out with milk. We end up with curds. So curds are like kind of like really soft jello-like pieces of cheese, and they get harder and harder as time goes on. And then ultimately we take those curds and press it into wheels of cheese like you see here. So these are special forms. They get squeezed for about 2.5 hours or so. Then when they're done being squeezed, the cheeses are formed, and then they're just sitting here until the next day. So today we made about 90 wheels of cheese like you see here on the table. After this, basically the next step happens the next day. So the cheeses will go into a brine tank. So brine is just a fancy word for salt water. So the next day, all of our cheeses are going into the brine room. So I'm just going to walk over to the brine room here. So in the brine room, let's see here. I'm just going to set my camera down. So in the brine room, we've got these wheels of cheese that are sitting on racks like this, and they're going to sit in this big tank of salt water for 2 days. After those 2 days, the cheese is kind of finished, but it needs to be aged. So with cheese, if you do not age it, it doesn't really taste like much. So the day that we make the cheese, it's got very little flavor. But after some time, the flavor starts to develop. And so that all happens in our curing rooms. Some of the cheeses that we make, they are sold right away, but some of them that we make are sold a couple years later. So in a typical year, we probably make about 100,000 kilograms, so that's about 250,000 pounds of cheese. That might seem like a large number, but it would take us an entire year to make what some of the big cheese factories make in a single day. So some of the big factories are the ones that you see in the grocery store, like Cracker Barrel and Artisan and things like that. So this is the brine room. And the best part is the aging room. So I'm just going to walk there. So we have a number of aging rooms. This is one of them. This is one of our bigger ones. So you can see these nice long rows of cheese. These are all wheels of our Five Brothers cheese. And so each one of these wheels, they weigh about 5 kilograms or so. And they're kept here for right now for 8 months. So in general, the longer you keep a cheese, the stronger the flavor will get. So for example, the Five Brothers, if we sold it at 2 months old, it would be very mild. We sell it at 8 months old where we feel like it's got a nice flavor. But then at a year and a half old, it's got a very strong flavor. So as time goes on, the cheese flavor gets stronger. Certain types of softer cheeses, once they get too old, they actually start to go bad. So brie is a good example. Once a brie starts to get older, it goes from being kind of creamy and mushroomy flavored to being kind of ammoniated flavors. It almost smells very bad. And so softer cheeses tend to do that. One cool thing about our Five Brothers cheese, which is the one that you're looking at, is it's called a washed rind cheese. So the rind is the outside cheese that you see here, the rind of the cheese. Now, the rind on this particular cheese is growing on. So it's a type of bacteria, and these form from sorry about that. So I don't think my phone likes the aging rooms very much. But the rind of the cheese, like I was mentioning, grows on it, and we wash the cheese every other day with salt water in order to encourage it to grow. So it's a fairly intense process. So over the life of a Five Brothers cheese, for example, it probably gets washed about 100 times. Each wheel weighs about 5 kilograms. So in the average week, people washing cheeses are lifting about 100,000 kilograms of cheese, which works out to a fair bit of a workout. Another cool thing to see is we make our brie style cheese, as I was talking about. And these brie, they grow this nice white mold on the outside. So if you can see these ones right here, they look kind of white and fuzzy on the outside. So it's a type of mold that grows on the outside of the brie, and that's what gives them their unique flavor and texture. They start out looking very plain, and then after about 10 days, they grow this nice mold on the outside. So the question that's popped up, is there a difference between pasteurized milk and raw milk cheese for making? There definitely is a difference in making cheese from pasteurized and from raw milk. We use all pasteurized milk here. If you are to use raw milk, there's a couple of rules in place. So one of the rules is that all the cheese that's made from raw milk must be aged for at least 60 days. And so some of our cheeses, like our brie and our fresh curds, they're aged for less than 60 days, so they're not allowed to be made out of raw milk. Also, when you're using raw milk, you have to be a lot more careful with the milk because you have a potential for a lot of types of bacteria that could potentially harm people in the milk. And so it's key that the actual milk is very clean to begin with, especially for quality as well. But the unique thing about raw milk is that you can get the natural occurring cultures from the farm, and you can end up with some unique flavors that are truly unique to your area. And so, in my point of view, sometimes you'll end up with a really fantastic cheese. Sometimes there's things in there that you don't want, so it's not so great, but you can get some really amazing raw milk cheeses from time to time. In our case, we do both cheeses that are aged for more than 60 days and cheeses that are aged for less than 60 days. So it works better just to use purely pasteurized milk. So I just want to give you a glimpse. This room here is very similar to the other room that you're in. But one thing in this room is we've got these great big wheels of cheese. So they might not look huge on your screen, but each wheel weighs about 25 kilograms or about 60 pounds or so. These are wheels of our Hendek cheese. And this is our oldest aged cheese. So we typically age it for about 2 years. And then we have a reserve version that we sell during the holidays that's aged for 4 years. Hendek is a harder cheese. It's kind of like a Swiss cheese called Gruyere, which typically comes from the mountains of Switzerland. And a lot of those types of cheeses are a lot harder. But as you can see, you know, there's quite a number of cheeses in the room here. There's a bunch of rows of cheeses like this. I think in total, there's something like 15,000 wheels of cheese in our building that we're always taking care of. And so that's a big part of making cheese, is just taking care of the cheeses that are aging. And then speaking about a big part of making cheese, one of the biggest parts of making cheese is actually cleaning. So cheese making sometimes seems like something that's fun and beautiful and whatnot, but really in the end, it involves a whole lot of cleaning. And so if you're into cleaning, you probably would make a great cheesemaker. I would say typically for every hour that we spend with the actual milk and cheese, we probably spend editing. Could we ever have the opportunity of sick? So once it's ready to go, we cut the cheeses into pieces, or we sell them as whole wheels. We sell our cheese all over Ontario. So we sell some right here at the cheese factory. We also sell some to grocery stores, to farmers markets. We sell some to restaurants. Restaurants have not been doing that great over this past year because of COVID. But hopefully for them in the next little while, they'll be able to kind of get things going again, and then be able to start getting some cheese. And then we also work with some distributors, and they'll carry it to some of the chain stores like Sobeys and Farm Boy and Longo's and things like that. But yeah, that's kind of in the nutshell of what we do here. I'm happy to answer some more questions as we go along. I see one here, which is a great question. I just kind of skipped over. But do cheeses have to be kept at different temperatures as they age? And they do. So our aging rooms are anywhere between 10 and 12 degrees Celsius. So they're cool, but it's not cold. And then it's about 90 to 95% humidity. In general, the younger cheeses need to be kept at a bit colder temperature, and the older ones can be kept slightly warmer. But a lot of cheeses fall in that range of 10 kind of to 15 degrees Celsius. I'm just going to move to a different room here. So all of our cheeses that we make are the same color. To answer your question about are all cheeses the same color, cheese is naturally white. Milk is white, so that kind of makes sense. The orange cheeses that you see in the grocery store, they've added a coloring to them to give them that orange culture. So they add the coloring. Somewhere along the line, a couple hundred years ago, we decided that we wanted to start having orange cheeses. And so we kind of got into this habit, which has continued to this day. But really, we don't add any coloring to our cheeses. We just let them be their natural color. That said, cow milk cheeses tend to have a little bit more yellowish color. And then cheeses that you get from different types of milk have a bit more, are kind of completely white. The main reason for this is in cow milk, there's a vitamin called beta carotene. So this particular vitamin is the same vitamin that you find a lot in carrots. gives carrots their very orange color, and it's very good for you. So cow milk tends to have a lot more beta carotene, which is this vitamin, than goat milk, for example. So the cheese tends to be a little bit more yellow than a goat milk, which tends to be very white. So I'm just going to try this. I don't know if it's going to work out on the camera, but I'm going to take 2 pieces of cheese and I'm going to put them side by side, one cow milk, one goat milk, and hopefully you're able to see the difference in color. So depending on the quality of the video, you can see the one cheese on the right-hand side is very white looking, and then the cheese on the left-handed side is more yellowish looking. The yellowish one is cow milk cheese, and the very white one is a goat milk cheese. Now this goat milk cheese, along with some sheep and water buffalo milk cheeses, we make those for other farmers. All the cow milk cheese we make comes from our own farm, but those other types of cheese that we make with milk from other species comes from other farms, and typically we make it for them. So they basically pay us to make the cheese, and then we give them the cheese back when they're ready. So I see a good question now. What's my favorite kind of cheese? I'm absolutely in love with cheese. I like all kinds of cheese. And my favorite does change from now to then, but I'm a really big fan of blue cheeses. And I really like the brie cheese that we make. So for our cheeses, our brie is my favorite one, just because it's super creamy and got lots of taste to it. But I really, really like blue cheeses. There's a couple that are my favorite. There's one from France that's called Sénégal, and it's a creamy blue cheese, got lots of taste, but also super smooth. And then there's another blue cheese from Ireland called Cashel Blue. And fortunately for me, several years ago, me and my wife and our son went to Ireland, and we visited the cheese factory, and we got to see where that particular type of cheese was made. And the owners were super cool and talked with us for a while, just because we're all cheesemakers. And it's not every day that you run into a cheesemaker. So another question is, what school do you go to if you want to do cheese as your profession? So historically, there has not been a cheese making school in Canada. So when I was learning how to make cheese, I took some classes at the University of Guelph in Vermont, and then I just got a bunch of experience where I could. But now, as of last year, there is now a official cheese making program at Conestoga College. So I think it's a year and a half, maybe a 2-year program. It's part of the Culinary Studies program, and you can actually sign up for the cheese making program there. It's both at Conestoga and La Cité, which is in Eastern Ontario. That would be the for those that speak French, and the one in Conestoga would be in English. I met a bunch of this year's students, and it seems like it's going very well. So that's a cool place. The University of Guelph also has a side cheesemaking program where it's just to get a certificate. So you take some classes in your own time. And once you've got enough of the classes in place, you get an actual cheesemaker certificate. One fun fact is the average age of a cheesemaker in Canada is 60 years old. So the general idea is that we are definitely going to need some cheesemakers moving forward. So the question is, if you leave a cheese out to age for too long, does it go bad? And yes, it will go bad. For a soft cheese like our brie, instead of being white, it'll start to turn brown and it's going to smell terrible. Our 5 brothers, like I mentioned, we sometimes age it for a year and a half, but we've tried to age it for 3 years before, so we just kept the wheel aside for 3 years. And by the time we hit 3 years, the cheese was so salty that you could hardly eat it. It had lots of flavor, but it's just like eating a bunch of salt. And so you could maybe cook with it, but it wasn't so tasty anymore. And then we also had problems with it kind of starting to break apart because it got so dry that it would just kind of crumble to pieces. The cheese that ages the longest is called cheddar cheese. So cheddar cheese is what we're all probably familiar with. It tends to age anywhere from a couple of days to like 10 years. It's very rare that you'll see any cheeses age beyond 4 years, except for cheddars. Cheddars, you can often hit the grocery store and you can find it in at 10 years old, at 5 years old. But yeah, like in general, the older it gets, the stronger the flavors of it are going to get. Okay, so I guess I missed, you didn't hear everything, but when I was speaking about the cheese making, I said for every hour of making cheese, we spend about 2 hours cleaning. So I'm the kind of person that I like things clean, and so I don't mind cleaning. I enjoy it a lot. I do lots of cleaning in our house as well, and so cheese making fits well with me. But yeah, we are just cleaning, cleaning, cleaning all the time because we have to make sure that there's never an opportunity for people to get sick from our cheese. The healthiest type of cheese? Oh, I don't know. A lot of cheeses are kind of the same. So depends on what you're looking for. Um, cheese is basically moisture, fat, and protein. So if you're looking to do a low-fat diet, cheese is probably not the thing for you. The other thing about cheese is it tends to be high in salt, sodium. So if you need to be keeping your sodium intake down, it's probably not the best for you. But on the other side, cheese is a natural product. And so my opinion would be that natural cheese would be the healthiest for you. A lot better than like Cheese Whiz, for example, which is a processed cheese product, or those Kraft Singles, which is another processed cheese product. I feel like true aged cheese is the best. I also think everything is important in moderation. And so sometimes when we have cheeses that don't have a lot of taste, we put a whole bunch of it on our sandwich in order to get that cheese flavor. But sometimes if you get cheeses with lots of flavor, like specialty cheeses that you can buy, then you need a whole lot less to give you that same kind of flavor. And so I think that's definitely a better option than a milder version of that cheese. And then in the end, cheese has a lot of essential vitamins and nutrients that are great for you. Calcium being the first and foremost one that you would think of. And so I think it's important in that way too. This is obviously anecdotal evidence, but I eat ridiculous amounts of dairy products and I have never broken a bone before. Is cheese making hard? That's a good question. Give me 1 second here. Cheese making can be difficult. It's physically demanding, so you have to do lots of lifting. You're on your feet all day, so in that way, it is fairly difficult. But if you took some milk in your home and then you put it in a pot and you wanted to make cheese, you could make cheese. You'll end up with cheese, almost guaranteed. Now, how good that cheese is going to be is up to be determined. So in general, it is difficult to make consistent high quality cheeses, but to just make cheese, it's not all that difficult, if that makes sense to you. Do we experiment with new cheeses? We do, yes. So we this year particularly, we've been doing a bunch of things. So we've been trying to come up with a new cheese every month, just like a one-off. Okay, let's try this thing out. So we've done a bunch of different flavors. So they're not so much new cheeses, they're just different flavors of our existing cheese. So the one that we have out right now, we've rubbed in coffee from a local coffee place here in Woodstock. I love coffee and I love cheese, so I tried to put them together, and it actually turned out really good. The one that's supposed to come out next month was like a typical Swiss cheese with the big holes in it. Well, my holes didn't grow, and so it doesn't look that good. And so I'm not too happy about that particular experiment. But we have some other ones coming out in the future too, and I'm definitely going to try the one with the holes again because I want to see if I can get that one right. To make Cheese Whiz by melting regular cheese. So Cheese Whiz is an interesting thing. So Cheese Whiz is called a processed cheese product. So this is very technical, but processed cheese product means that it has less than 50% real cheese in it. So Cheese Whiz has less than 50% real cheese. So typically Cheese Whiz is made by taking all little bits and crumbs and pieces of cheese, kind of things that have been cut off, and then they'll mix it in with a whole bunch of other stuff. And what all those other things are, I'm not 100% sure, but there are more of the other things than there is of the real cheese. And so Cheese Whiz is not a whole lot of actual cheese in it.
If I'm going to be completely honest, I like Cheese Whiz on raisin bread. I haven't bought Cheese Whiz in a lot of years because I feel really guilty about doing that, but still having Cheese Whiz on raisin bread has always been one of my favorites. Is grass-fed milk different from non-grass-fed milk for cheese making? So the actual process will be very similar. The milk will be very similar. Some of the differences are going to come out in later on in some of the flavors. So what the cow eats will impact some of the flavors that develop later on when the cheese is aging. So grass-fed milk will have different types of levels of certain proteins and different other components in it. So then you'll end up with a different flavor. I was talking a little bit about the beta carotene, that vitamin that gives it the orange color. Grass-fed milk definitely tends to have more beta carotene than non-grass-fed milk for cheese making. But another important thing is how the grass is kept. So sometimes people bale it, and sometimes people store it in silos where it's fermented. And so those two things, baled dry hay and fermented grass, can make a major difference too for cheese making, especially some of the problems that they can cause. As a general rule of thumb, the dry hay is a better option. Our best-selling cheese by far is our Five Brothers. I'm one of Five Brothers, hence the name of the cheese, and so that is definitely our flagship product. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you learned some things. You can always check out our website and check us out in Woodstock.